Shaun Rhein is the author of The Split, Finding the Opportunities in China's Economy in the New World Order. And a very fine book it is too. Shaun, welcome back to the mother of all talk shows. Before we talk about the bigger picture, breaking news tonight is that the two generals, military men that are under investigation in China, one of them, one of the most powerful men in China, is accused of giving nuclear secrets to the Americans. If this report is accurate, this is a truly remarkable turn of events and effectively unmasks a coup which failed, but a coup nonetheless inside China, which most people thought was impervious to such things. Have you got a view on that?
So it's good to be here, George. I don't have any inside knowledge of what's happened with the arrest of Zhang Youxia, who is actually the top uniformed military man in China. Some people say it's about corruption. Other people say that it's about factional fighting and potentially a coup, as you mentioned. Now, from my experience in dealing with the Chinese military over the last 30 years, corruption is a serious problem. I can give 2 points. In the 1980s, when China was first embracing capitalism, it was actually the military that first started going into business. So they owned all of the nightclubs. They owned a lot of industries, and they became not fighting machines, but they became basically for profit. If you wanted to open up a hotel or if you wanted to do anything big, you would always try to give a 10-20% cut to the military. And so Jiang Zemin, the former president of China, tried to stop this, and he banned the military from actually being in business. But the reality is the corruption is serious. So when people say that, is this a crackdown on corruption? There is that possibility. I know I did a project for a hedge fund 10 years ago that was selling Mao Tai and Wuliangyan, the very expensive white alcohol in China. And they were selling it to the military. And my investor client thought that the business would collapse because of the crackdown on corruption. We called the military procurement officers and they said, no worries, we're going to keep buying alcohol. We're the Chinese military. We can do whatever we want. So the reality, George, is that the Chinese military is rife with corruption. Now, I don't know in this case if this was a crackdown on corruption, but here's the thing. 5 of the 7 people on China's Central Military Commission have been arrested or under investigation over the last 2 years. That's unprecedented to have so many people. What it means is I actually think it means that China is not going to try to use armed aggression to attack Taiwan anytime soon, because the military is focused on corruption, balance of power issues, whatever it is. I think you hear the drumbeats of war that the West says that China is about to attack Taiwan isn't going to happen anytime soon. Now, the other thing, George, is when it comes to Taiwan, what a lot of Americans don't realize, and British, is that the relations between the KMT, or the Kuomintang, the opposition party in Taiwan, is at an all-time high with the CPC right now. So President Ma, the former president of Taiwan, who's the head of the KMT previously, has been visiting mainland China several times in the last couple years. He's been feted like a hero. The current chairman of the KMT said she would like to meet with President Xi. And what China has done is they've given subsidies, they've given special benefits for any Taiwanese that live in Fujian province, the province closest Taiwan, to buy housing, go to university, and seek medical care. So in my mind, because of the disarray in the Chinese military, because China's pragmatic, I don't see armed aggression between Taiwan and mainland China happening anytime soon. I don't think that there is a deal between Xi and Trump where Xi takes Taiwan and Trump takes Venezuela.
No, I'm absolutely in agreement with you on that. The KMT look like they're coming back to power. The current government of Taiwan is deeply unpopular and becoming more and more so. These visits are taking place. It looks much more plausible that the apple will fall from the tree rather than that it will have to be violently shaken. Now, you mentioned corruption. It is the leitmotif of President Xi Jinping to destroy corruption. I mean, his latest statement that those who seek political office should not seek wealth, and those who seek wealth should not seek to influence those with political office. And he's been remarkably successful in this, hasn't he? And that's coincided, might even be causal, that's coincided with an enormous increase in China's wealth and the standard of living of the Chinese people.
Yeah, that's a great point. So when Xi Jinping became chairman in 2012, he really faced two major challenges to his legitimacy and the legitimacy of the CPC. The first was pollution, and the second was corruption. The pollution in 2012-2013 was terrible. You often hit over 300 or over 500 on the AQI index. You felt like you were chewing the air. I mean, I almost left China in that time because the pollution was so bad. Now, you get blue skies most of the time. The AQI index is as good in Shanghai, where I live right now, as in most cities in the United States. And that's why you see outdoor running, marathon running, rock climbing is soaring as a hobby in China because the pollution is so much better. It's not even an issue. I was actually in Thailand last month on vacation, and the air in Shanghai was better than the air on the ocean side in Thailand. So she needs to be given credit for that. The second part is corruption. It was like you wouldn't believe in China. You could drive a car. If you were an official and the police stopped you for driving too fast, and I've been in cars like this, in a friend's car, where the friend would say, "You can't give me a ticket. You don't know who I am." And then they would call someone and say, "Don't give him a ticket to the police officer." The corruption was a day-to-day, 5 times a day an issue that everyday Chinese got mad at. Now, here's the thing, George. What do governments need to do? So in China, under Xi Jinping, the CPC is looking after the 90% of the population, the low and middle class Chinese. There are about 850 million of them. These are people that the government says, you know what? They might not be rich, they might not have a lot of influence, but they're the majority. As a Communist Party of China, we need to take care of them. So what the CPC has done under Xi, and you have to give them credit, is they've cracked down on corruption. They've extended access to medical care and education, right? It's only about $2,000-3,000 US a year to go to Tsinghua, the best university in China, while it costs $100,000 a year to go to MIT or NYU or Harvard in the United States. I just got my teeth cleaned in China. It cost me $8 with an x-ray. It can cost $350 US in America. So while America, the problem is the government is based off of helping the rich 10%. You see a Donald Trump, you see a Ted Cruz, you see these politicians do whatever their political patrons want. The Ken Griffins, the Alex Soroses of the world, they try to raise money from them and then implement the policies that they want. In China, the government has decided we need to help the 90%. Now, that doesn't mean everything's perfect here. Don't get me wrong, there's still a lot of problems in China. But Xi Jinping and the CPC need to be given credit for cracking down on corruption, basically stopping air pollution, and focused on improving the lives of the top 90%. The 850 million Chinese who just want to go to school, feed their kids, see a dentist.
Let's turn to the economy on which you are a considerable expert. Your book is absolutely brilliant, indispensable actually for anyone who wants to understand the Chinese economy. And if you don't want to understand the Chinese economy, you're particularly stupid, as it is already the world's biggest manufacturer and is, I think, arguably already the world's biggest economy, although the Chinese, in the ancient way, often like to feign inferiority, and they don't like you saying they are the biggest economy. They either are or they're knocking on the door of being the world's biggest economy. Your book deals with the opportunities for the West in that and for capitalism within that. But the Western governments have been particularly stupid in continuing to foster enmity and even hostility against China. In my monologue, I made the point that Keir Starmer, on his way to kowtow to the CPC, has spent the last few years variously describing China as an adversary, as an enemy, as a security threat. In the Parliament just a month or two ago, the Speaker of the Parliament held an emergency statement to say that the Chinese were everywhere under the desks in the British Parliament, spying on unknown MPs who know nothing, I can tell you, worth knowing, or spying on. Macron, only again a few months ago, evincing hostility against China. Von der Leyen ordering the European Union to send their navies to patrol China's seas and threaten China. Now, they've all realized with Trump's behavior, they better suddenly get close to China. What are their chances?
Yeah, I don't understand Europe, George. I think there's obviously geopolitical tension between the US and China, and Europe should be the major beneficiary. Europe should play the Americans and the Chinese off each other. So, Macron should be coming to China and saying, we'll support you a bit if you buy more Airbus airplanes. But then they should go to the United States and try to get more LNG gas and other energy and play off China. The big winners of geopolitical tension should be Europe. But Europe is poorly run. If you look at it, in 2009, Europe's economy was actually larger than America's. Now it's 40% smaller. So the problem is we have people like Kaja Kallas, the head of foreign affairs, who I just don't understand how she possibly could have that position, who's tweeted that China is happy and is the threat because the United States is trying to take over Greenland. Somehow she makes it about China. Or Mark Rutte, the former Dutch prime minister, who's now the Secretary General of NATO, has said that China will definitely force Russia to attack NATO countries. And he's been sort of prostrating himself and bending over for Donald Trump, despite Trump threatening Denmark and threatening Greenland. It just doesn't make any sense. So what should Europe do? They should follow the playbooks of Australia's Albanese. They should follow the playbooks of Mark Carney in Canada and try to do deals with China. So China is a very strong economy. It's the second largest in the world, perhaps the largest when you look at PPP, as you said. But here's the thing. The economy is weak right now. Youth employment is about 16.5%. You have real estate has dropped 30 to 40%. Retail sales only went up 0.9% in December. So we're having a weak quarter. Am I worried about China's economy in the long term? Absolutely not. It's going to still be the major driver for economic growth, accounting for about 30% of economic growth in the world in 2026. So long term, China's fine. It's got AI, it's got semiconductors, it'll do well. But in the short term, there are some issues, and that's because the United States is trying to contain China. So what does China need to do? It needs to sign deals with European nations, and that's the best opportunity. So instead of buying soybeans from the United States, China started buying soybeans from Brazil. Instead of buying oil from the United States, they're buying oil from Canada. Instead of buying beef from the United States, they're buying beef from Australia. So this is a real opportunity for European nations to say, look, we want to sell you more products, get rid of the trade deficit, and more importantly, George, is they need to say, you know what, China? We want your companies to come to Europe, build factories, and hire European workers. It's a win-win for everyone. They should say that BYD or Xiaomi, which are big NEV makers, should buy up hollowed out factories in Germany or France from the automakers and hire local workers. Now, here's the problem. Huawei tried to do this in France recently. They spent millions of dollars building up a big factory only to shut it 2 months before it was supposed to open. Why? Because Macron's government said that Huawei could no longer be involved in the telecom system of France. And so they said, you know what? Why should we be here? They closed the factory and left. That's the problem, George. You've got this fearmongers in Europe. You've got bigots. You've got racists who on the one hand say they want Chinese money, but then they spit on China and call them a threat. That's the problem that's going on in Europe right now. I feel really bad for Europeans because most Europeans I meet are pretty nice, but they've got the worst leaders in the world And if you don't get better leaders soon, Europe is going to be the next Africa in terms of economic impoverishment.
Well, that's a zinger, Shaun. That one will live. I'm coming to Shanghai in a couple of days' time. I'm hoping to get a Zeekr and one of those 40% cheaper apartments that you referred to. But let's turn to Comrade Carney, as I now call him. Having reviled him for many decades, he's now standing up to Donald Trump, and Donald Trump is openly threatening him to the point that it would not be beyond the realms of imagination for the Americans to actually take action, not just economic action, but kinetic action against Carney. For what? Because he's made a trade deal with China? Will Carney stand up to this threat, do you think?
Yeah, I'm scared for the world right now. I think Carney has a backbone. I think he's doing what's good for Canada. I'm American, even though I've been in China for 30 years, but I actually went to McGill University in Canada for my college. So I have an affinity for all three countries. I think Carney's doing the right thing for Canada, right? He can't put too much reliance on the United States. Right now, Canada does about 600 billion US a year in economic trade with the United States. Only about 100 billion a year with China, but he needs to offset just the same way that I said Europe needs to do. He needs to play both sides. And I think a normal leader would be understanding of that. The problem with Trump is I think something has snapped in his brain in the last 4 or 5 months. I've never been a never Trumper. I actually like some of his policies, but honestly, I think there's some mental illness that's emerged in the last 4 or 5 months. And so you can't look at him from a geopolitical or trade standpoint as, doing 4D chess or doing spheres of influence in the Donroe Doctrine versus China and Asia. I think he's being driven by narcissistic personality disorder and which he's always had, but also newly emerged mental illnesses. And so I worry what he's going to do. When I speak to government leaders in small and mid countries, they're fearful for their families. They say that under Trump, because you have sycophants in the cabinet like Marco Rubio, that they're going to just sanction not just the presidents or prime ministers of countries, but also go after their families. And if you're a small country, especially in the Western Hemisphere, and you're the head of a country that's 500,000 people or 50,000 people, and your kids get sanctioned, your kids can't do anything. I mean, this is evil. If you want to sanction a government leader, that's one thing, but what about the families? And this is my concern for Carney, because Carney's daughter is at Harvard right now. She's a freshman, my alma mater, and I think a lot of this becomes personal, because when Carney's daughter was trying to apply to or go into Harvard over the summer, Trump was holding up the sword of Damocles saying that international students couldn't get student visas to the United States. And he was specifically targeting Harvard. So I think that the Carney family saw, they weren't singled out at this time, but I think they saw the behavior of Trump and how that hurt his daughter. And I think that probably gave Carney a bit more backbone than he might have had, because he saw his own family getting hurt. So my concern, George, and I don't mean this as a joke, I don't mean this because I hate Trump. I like Trump's policies towards China more than I like Biden's, but I do think we have mental illness right now. And so he's making decisions that are not based off of 4D chess, but also he can't control himself. If he feels that somebody's attacking him or not being a sycophant, he will lash out and hurt countries. And what he's doing to Canada is morally wrong, just like what Biden did to China was morally wrong. It's a very scary time, George.